Hello my dears, welcome to today's training session. Today I wanted to talk to you specifically about how I came to my decision to transition, because I know that a lot of people really struggle with this, whether it's going through a massive change in your life or certainly as a trans person when you don't know if you have got the courage or the tenacity or the resources to be able to transition. I wanted to share this with you and I hope that it will help make your mind up one way or the other, or at least help you explore those reasons again. When I was growing up, I always felt like a girl, and I had to keep it hidden internally because of the environment I grew up in. I left school, joined the army, left the army after 4 years, still wasn't happy, thought they would knock this out of me and it didn't. I then settled down, got married, had a baby. The one thing I never ever regret in the whole of my life is having had a baby. Me and my daughter have a fantastic relationship and I wouldn't change that for the world. But certainly whilst I did all these things to try and live a truth that was put out there for me, none of it felt right. There was always this yearning to be different, to live my truth. So I was in a relationship and I went out to Newcastle. I am from that area. I support the team and stuff, and I went to the game on this day, on the 22nd of April 2012 it was. And whilst I was there, my girlfriend at the time, she was cool with me expressing myself in a feminine way. So we took the decision that I could go out as Debbie in Newcastle, because I figured, you know what, if I can go out as Debbie in Newcastle, it's my home city, I can do it anywhere and I can express myself in a way that, you know, is perhaps more open, and I was going to start being more open about who I was. So I was out in Newcastle. I was, as you can imagine, this was my first time out ever in like a city centre as Debbie. I was absolutely petrified, shaking like a leaf. The taxi driver was amazing. She was wonderful when she took us from the hotel to the city centre, and she dropped us off in the gay area, and I was waiting there to go to this gay bar, and there was these like three big gay bear kind of blokes standing there, and one of the guys looked at me, he went, "You're right, sweetie." He goes, "No, I'm shitting myself." And he goes, "Why?" And he goes, "Because that's my first night out." And he goes, "Well, you don't look like it, you look amazing, you're doing great." And I was like, "Oh, thanks." But yeah, that was my kind of first interaction with a stranger who met me as Debbie in the city centre, and then I went to this gay bar. And you know what, for the first time in my life, I was expressing myself in a way that I wanted to, and I wasn't wishing I was something else. You know, a lot of the time I struggled when I used to pre-transition with, you know, I'd look at women and I'd be like, oh God, I love what she's wearing, but also I want to express myself in the way that they are. And I kind of had that internal jealousy and kind of sadness, if I'm going to be honest, the sadness, you know, especially when I used to go to a full few support group meetings, and whenever I used to go to these meetings I was able to express myself in a feminine way. It was great, and then I want to come back and have to go back into male mode. It was always a sense of grieving because I wasn't able to express myself in the way that I wanted to, and I yearned to express myself in the way that I had done when I was at these meetings. So anyway, I digress. So I was at this bar in Newcastle, and for the first time in my life, people were calling me Debbie. They were referring to me with female pronouns and stuff, and I was like, you know what, I can't live this anymore. I'm going to do it. I just made the decision there and then to just transition. And while some people might say that's a bit mental, or, you know, for some people they're going to have to do a lot more searching and soul-searching, and, you know, having trial runs, if you like, in public and stuff. For me, it just, having lived 39 years as someone else, I just couldn't do it anymore. I knew that sooner or later I was going to have to try and take my life again, as I did when I was 20, tried to when I was 23, because I just couldn't cope with living in a world where I couldn't express myself. And it was a real epiphany, eye-opening, wonderful moment. It's like, do you know what, I'm going to do it. So like, I spoke to my work, they were amazing. They facilitated my move into a new area. I didn't want to live in the same area, although it was really painful and moving away from my daughter. I knew that, you know, there wasn't any gay bars, let alone support networks in the town I was living. So I thought, if I move away, then I can start anew. And I moved to Bournemouth because there's a really good LGBT scene, but also there is a trans community here, quite a big one. Certainly one that I've become a massive part of, and I'm really, really grateful that I took those decisions to transition, because now I can look back and think, I can't believe I didn't do it sooner. I'm glad I didn't, because I maybe wouldn't have had my daughter. And as I said, I don't regret that for a second. But certainly kind of the relationship that I have with her now is phenomenal. She's amazing. I'm very lucky. I know as a trans woman that I have an ex-partner who facilitates my seeing my daughter as much as possible, because a lot of trans people don't. I know I'm one of the lucky ones, but certainly, all the fears that I had about transitioning, about people who weren't going to accept me, about my work was going to be really difficult, people were going to hate on me and stuff. As far as hate crimes go, I've only experienced 3 since I've been transitioning, so in a 5-year period. I think that's pretty good. But also, all the fears I had, none of them were real. It was really, really interesting as well, because I met a group of another group of trans people, let's just say, because trans is an umbrella term, and it is for anyone who doesn't kind of fit the gender binary normal ways of expression. There was a group of women who you would get, as we would call, cross-dressers and stuff, when I was at this bar. And one of them, I was talking to her about, I was feeling that I wanted to transition, because I just, for the first time in my life, felt really happy and stuff. And she said to me, well, what if you're in a supermarket and a kid reads you and stuff? And I was like, well, what if? She's like, how will you feel when you have to leave the house and people can tell that, you used to be a man, that you're a man living as a woman? And I was like, well, what if? A lot of the time people don't want to follow through on their truth and live their truth because they're afraid of what other people will think. All I'm going to say to you is, what do you think? Do you think it's a good enough reason to not live your truth because you're worried about what other people will think and how they will react towards you? When someone reads me, it happens quite regularly, and I'm just confident with it. I say, yeah, I am. Tyrion in Game of Thrones, unless you live in a rock, you'll have heard of Game of Thrones, said famously in one of the episodes, because, well, if you wear your difference as a suit of armour, then it can't be used to hurt you. And I agree. I absolutely agree. I know some trans people want to live stealth, and I fully understand the reasons, given the prejudices in society that we still face, even though trans awareness is more prevalent now. I understand why people want to do it. Me personally, I think that trans people who are coming to the decision to transition, but also, kids who are struggling with gender identity and sexual expression and stuff, they need people like me to be visible, to know that it's okay to be trans and out and open about it. I did want to share kind of 4 tips with you, that things that you have to perhaps consider when you're looking at a decision to transition, whether it's, making a massive change like as I have with your gender identity, or whether it's admitting your sexuality or whatever it is. There are kind of 4 topics I want you to consider. Look at the reasons that you're doing it. Number 1, why do you want to transition? I'm guessing, as I did, that you want to live an authentic truth, that you want to express yourself in a way that you've always wanted to, and that's really important that you do that. I can't emphasize enough how once you start living your truth, how freeing it is. You do feel like a burden has been lifted, and you can express yourself in a way you've always wanted to. But also, when I look back at my life and look at the friendships and relationships that I had, while they were close, and I did have a few, like a handful of close friends, I still wasn't expressing myself in a way that I wanted to. So I was holding a certain element of myself back from them. And the relationships and the friendships that I have now as Debbie, whilst those friendships in the past were meaningful, these ones I think are far more meaningful, because I am my whole self, and when you bring your whole self to a world, then you benefit more from it and you get more back. So look at the reasons that you're trying to make those decisions. You can make a pro and con list, so like, what will happen if I do, what will happen if I don't. I can guarantee you, if you don't, you're always going to wonder. You're always going to be feel uncomfortable when you're reminded of this subject matter. When you're faced with people who are like you and stuff, as I was. And certainly the worst that can happen, which is going to be the next step. So you look at the worst that could happen. The worst that could happen, honestly, if you're a trans person and you start expressing yourself, is that you might lose some friends and family, as I have done. Certainly, my brother and my sister and my mum, don't really talk to them anymore. My mum I talk to a couple of times a year, just because I want to maintain that contact with my past. I love my mum, as I've said in previous podcasts, and I want to have a relationship with her. But at the same time, she misgenders me. She calls me by my dead name. And it really, I understand why she does that, because she's never met Debbie, so to her I'm still the old person, but still, I maintain that contact. And a lot of trans people don't lose their families, though. I know trans people who have their parents supporting them with their transition, who take them to appointments and stuff. It all depends on the person and the family and the relationship that you guys have. But that is the worst that can happen. But in losing your family, you gain a family of people around you who support you and who love you and who know you. You know, my partner's family are flipping amazing. They just, yeah, you're Debbie, you're with her, and that's fine, and we love you and stuff. So, I think people see a real strength of character and a real courage in someone who's expressing themselves. A lot of people say, oh, trans people are brave, and I know some trans people don't like that label, but when you're encountering members of the public who perhaps have something that they want to do and they've never followed it through, and then you're a trans person who's standing there in front of them, I can kind of get why. I do get why they say that you're brave and you have a lot of courage. So, whilst the worst can happen, also quite often the things that you think are going to happen don't. Like, I thought my ex-wife was going to go mental and she was going to stop me from seeing my daughter. She absolutely hasn't. That would have been the worst that could have happened for me, and it didn't. My colleagues could have been really mean towards me. They were amazing, they were accepting, they were really protective towards me. And certainly, I wasn't expecting that either. 9 times out of 10, it's the complete opposite of what we expect. Certainly, I thought the majority wouldn't accept me. It's actually the minority that don't. And the minority that don't, they really don't matter, honestly. The opinion of someone who isn't important in your life, who isn't part of your life, it really doesn't matter. And then, that leads on to the fourth point, the fears. The fears of not being accepted, the fear of transitioning and kind of being called out on it, especially early transition. It happened to me all the time, and I'm going to go into that in another training video because I want to talk specifically about how to deal with the stresses and emotions of, being called out early in transition and stuff. That is another training session. But certainly the fears that you have, I promise you, they're not, whilst they're real because they're things that you feel, they never really come to fruition. They don't, and I hope that you've kind of taken heart in this. If you look back at my first videos, please go back. If you think that I'm talking rubbish, go and look at blogs 1, 2 and 3. These were before I transitioned socially and at work and everything else. I was petrified. I was nervous. I didn't know what my colleagues were going to think. How I am towards the camera and stuff was really, really terrible. I didn't really speak confidently. I mean, now, this is a person, I know I had training notes on my first video, but I thought, do you know what? That isn't what being authentic's about. It's about, expressing yourself in a way that's true and is more congruent with being authentic. So I don't have notes now. I speak extemporaneously, as I have done in all of my videos in the past. I promise you, when you've made the decision to transition and you start transitioning, whatever it is, whether it's with their sexuality or gender identity or gender expression, because some people are non-binary, or they're genderqueer and they want to flip-flop between the two genders, that's totally fucking cool. The most important thing is that when you look in the mirror, do you love the person that you see? And if you love the person that you see when you look in the mirror, it's all that matters. So I just want to say thanks for watching. Be yourself, no one else, and I look forward to sharing next week's training video with you. Until then, take care. Bye.